All right, so we're going to continue with some graphing stuff today. We're going to work on worksheet 6 some more. The last recording on the notes for the 6th, today's the 7th, right?
Yeah.
Okay, had some graphing towards the end of the recording. So this is more graphing information, and then we're going to also spend some time answering questions today. All right, this is a really information-packed slide. It talks about domain and range, which we did yesterday, but it also talks about some crazy things, like the sine graph basically intercepts the x-axis every multiple of pi. So at 0, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, okay? Whereas the cosine graph has intercepts at pi over 2 and every multiple of pi after that. Okay, they are both continuous. If we scroll down here just a little bit, they go on and on, right? So they have maximums that repeat, they have minimums that repeat. They do not approach any kind of a limit out on the ends because they just continue to wave up and down. All right, I'm not going to spend too much more time on that. All right, this slide is really important that you understand. It is possible to write a sine graph or a cosine graph in either one of these forms. The A in either form will represent what? Anybody know what that A is? The amplitude, okay? The absolute value of that is the amplitude. In other words, it can't be negative. We'll talk more about that in a second. The B value affects the period, but it's a kind of weird inverse relationship, right? It's 2 pi over B. Is the period. We good so far? Then the weirdness here, in this particular form, when you have not factored out the B, the phase shift, the left or right shift, is actually C over B, or the opposite of C over B. If you factor it out, the B, then the phase shift is just the B value because you've already taken the B and divided it out. Now that's confusing to some students, but when I do this, I divided out the 2. Does that make sense? So that if I multiplied it back in, it would be 2x plus 4. Okay, when you factor something out, you're dividing it out. So that's why if you have it outside the parenthesis, then the phase shift is just C. Whoops, I didn't mean to erase there. I'm really good at that the last couple days. Okay, so it's just B. And last but not least, what does the D tell us? Added onto the end is the vertical shift up and down, right? If it's a plus, it's positive. Now, they will do some crazy stuff like this, guys. This is a vertical shift, right? Even though it came at the front, because it's a -2 that's added on, it would shift the whole graph down too. All right, amplitude by definition is half the distance between the max and the min. So if you take the max and you subtract the min and you divide by 2, you'll get the amplitude. That becomes very important when we write equations next week. That's always going to be a positive number because even if we have 2 negative numbers, if we take the bigger one, subtract the smaller one, and then divide by 2, that distance will be positive. So the amplitude is always positive. Everybody good? All right. The period is the distance it takes to complete one cycle. So you could measure that from max to max, or min to min, or intercept to intercept as long as it's completed one full cycle, done the down and the up part. And when we have sine and cosine, okay, to find the relationship between that length and the b in the equation, you have to take 2 pi and divide it by b, and that will give you the period. Yes, everybody okay? So how do you find b? If you knew the period, it's 2 pi divided by the period equals b, right? They have a reciprocal relationship. All right, so you have all this on your paper. I covered most of it, not all of it though. This piece over here, the frequency, is just the reciprocal of the period. 1 over the period, or b over 2 pi is the frequency. We're going to do some of that today, and it's on the bookwork. Vertical shift is d, but think about this a minute. Vertical shift is also the average. So if you add the max and the min and divide it by 2, you'll find the average in the middle. That's going to be the vertical shift. Does that make sense? It's also the midline. The midline is just y equals whatever that d value is. The midline is the line that goes through the middle, that it's above and below. Okay, it's going to ask you to find an equation of a midline a few times today. Excuse me, let's do this example. What's the amplitude from this crazy equation? 2, not negative, right? It has to be positive. Amplitude is always positive. Okay, what is the b value? Not the period, but the b value. It's not 1 because of that over 4. It's 1/4, yes. X over 4 is the same as 1/4 x. So b is 1/4. What does that make the period though? 2 pi over 1/4, which is 8 pi. Everybody okay? Now, it's kind of confusing, but follow me over here. From 4/3 to 28/3, if we subtract, that's 24/3. Everybody okay? 28 minus 4 is 24, and 24/3 would be 24 divided by 3 would be 8. So that is 8 pi on the picture. Do you see that? It's kind of crazy. All right. Phase shift is the tricky one because this is an unfactored form, so we have to do c, which is pi over 3, divided by b, which we said was what? 1/4. So what is pi over 3 divided by 1/4 become? Yeah. Boy, I wrote that really messy. Sorry. Thanks. Do you see that it starts here at 4 pi over 3? Now, starts is kind of a weird, doesn't start or stop. But the other issue is it's a negative cosine, so it should be going minimum to minimum, right? Okay, so that's why its minimum is at 4 pi over 3. Okay, last one. What's the vertical shift? Okay, that's where the midline would be up here. It's this plus 2 on the back. Does that seem all right to everybody? Up 2, and this one was right, 4 pi over 3. All right, I left this blank here because I usually rewrite it in factored form. So if I had factored it out, we really already did that because we said it's negative 2 cosine. What did we decide b was? 1/4. And then after you factored it out, that gave you the phase shift, which is 4 pi over 3. See, if I had given you the factored form, would it have been much easier to find the phase shift? Yeah, I like the factored form better. I don't care. A lot of times the book and the homework on the bottom of worksheet 7b, it gives you the unfactored form, okay? When you go to write equations next week, you can write the equation in either form, but it's easier to just leave it in the factored form, okay? This is a big issue for students. When you start having to do those little quarter points and it's had a phase shift, remember what I'm talking about? It becomes a nightmare, right? Well, the basic idea is the smallest unit you're going to keep adding on is the period divided by 4. Okay? I'll remind you that in a minute. All right. What can you tell me about this one? By the way, you don't have any on the homework with phase shift until next week. But these examples have phase shifts. The amplitude is 3. The period, anybody? 2 pi divided by 2, because the b is 2, right? So the period is pi. The vertical shift, anybody? None, right? There's no added or subtracted outside the parentheses. Phase shift, is this factored or unfactored? It's unfactored, so we have to do c over b. So it's pi over 2. Is the phase shift left or right? It's the opposite of, remember anything like the vertex form? You remember this? The vertex was at 6, 2. It's the opposite of this, yes? Okay, same thing. It's the opposite. Ooh, I don't know what happened there. Sorry, I thought I had my eraser. All right, so this one is shifted to the left, pi over 2. If this is pi over 2, what's this halfway to pi over 2 business? Pi over 4. So this would be a negative pi over 4. And over here, out here around the end of the arrow would be a negative pi over 2. So if this graph is shifted to the left pi over 2, it's going to start here. Now it's going to finish, it's not really starting, it's continuous, but it's going to finish one cycle pi later. What's pi later from negative pi over 2? Pi over 2, because half a pi is going to be negative, and then another half a pi is going to be positive. That's 1 pi. Where would it finish the next cycle by then? 3 pi over 2. All right. This had no vertical shift, but the amplitude is 3, so where are all the maxes and mins at? Max is in the front row, but every time I say that, I'm like... Okay, the maximums are at 3, so I like to draw a little line, tell myself not to go above there, and the minimums are at negative 3 because there was no vertical shift. So the amplitude tells us the maxes and mins. All right, this is a sine graph, so it should start where? Normally at the origin or the midline, right? The midline is just the x-axis here. So it's going to start here. It's going to finish by pi over 2. So what's it have to do? It's got to go up, cross through the origin, come back down and hit the minimum and go back to pi over 2. Okay, not the best, but not the worst graph I've ever drawn. Do you need me to actually write the ordered pairs, or have we put enough points on here that you could do them if I made you? This would be negative pi over 2, 0, negative pi over 4, 3, 0, 0, pi over 4, negative 3. We good? And then it would continue. This would be 3 pi over 4. What would this one be right here? 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, which reduced. 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, which reduced. This one would be 5 pi over 4. All right, my graph is getting worse as I go. Everybody okay? All right, one more crazy one, and then we'll do some different stuff here. This one has 2 things that have changed. The amplitude is just what? 1, and the period is just not 1. B is 1, so the period is a normal period, which is 2 pi. Vertical shift, anybody?
2.
Up 2, and the phase shift? Right pi over 3. Okay, I love when they don't give us graph paper to try to make this work on, because then I can do anything I want, right? So I can say, well, this looks like pi over 3 to me. Now, let's stick with me on this one because this is one of those crazy ones. We need to add 2 pi onto that to find the end. What is pi over 3 plus 2 pi? You could do 1/3 plus 2, math enter on your calculator. Just leave out the pi's. Or you can make this common denominator of 3, which would make the top what? 6. So 6 and 1/3. 6/3 plus 1/3 is 7/3. Okay. That's where it's going to end. Now, do you remember me saying earlier, you take the period and divide by 4 to get the smallest increment, right? So the period here was 2 pi. You divide it by 4, which gives you pi over 2. That's how much you need to add on every time you give another spot here. As far as finding all your little quarter points, okay? We're adding pi over 2's because that's 1/4 of the period. Well, what's a pi over 3 plus a pi over 2? Yes, 1/3 plus 1/2, or 3/6, or 2/6, I'm sorry, plus 3/6 is 5/6. So the next ordered pair right here is going to be 5 pi over 6. Now you have to add another pi over 2, which is 3/6, which is 8/6. What does that reduce to? 4/3. Does that make any sense to anybody that that's exactly between 1 and 7 is 4? All right, we got one more to go. We got to add one more pi over 2, or 3/6. 5 and 3 was 8, and 3 more would be 11 pi over 6. This is not going to be on this assignment. There's more on this next week where you have to add crazy business. You still have to divide it into fourths today, but you don't have to necessarily add to some crazy phase shift. All right, this one had a vertical shift of up 2, right? So way up here at 2, it's going 1 unit above, up to 3, and 1 unit below, which is 1. It's a cosine, so it starts where? At its max. And then it goes here, and then down to here. Is that good enough, or do you want me to write the ordered pairs?
Ordered pairs.
This would be pi over 3, 3, 5 pi over 6, 2, 4 pi over 3, 1, 11 pi over 6, 2, and 7 pi over 3, 3. Smart Alec isn't even taking notes. Mister, I need the ordered pairs. Are those ordered pairs written there?
No, I just needed time to write the graph.
All right, guys, I need you to be paying attention because this is new frequency. I don't know that you did this even in trig, okay? Frequency is the reciprocal of period. It is the number of cycles that occur in 1 unit. So if this is 1 second in time, this has a frequency of 2.5 because it takes 1 cycle, 2 cycles, and another half a cycle. 2.5 cycles get finished by 1. Okay? So the period is the reciprocal. The frequency is the reciprocal of period, but that also means the period is the reciprocal of frequency. They have an inverse relationship. And instead of then 2 pi over b, you can find it by doing b over 2 pi. So, I'm going to skip that example, and we're going to go to these, and then we'll do the music example that's on your paper. Really quick, this one has a bunch of extra information. All I want is the frequency. What do I need to find the frequency? Okay. Or even just B, right? Because, yes, it's
Absolute value of
B
the
over 2 pi. Well, it's absolute value B. B is positive here, so we're good. What is the B value? Now, students get this messed up, though. It's not 4 pi.
What?
Because it's 1/2, yes. It's 1/2 divided by 2 pi. When you divide, you're flipping this over, so this becomes 1 over 2 pi. Is that 1/4 pi? No, the pi is in the denominator. It's 1 over 4 pi. So if we divided, that'd be a really small number, okay? It's like 1 divided by 12 point something. All right, and that is the frequency. Where's the midline? That's easy. The midline is at y equals, what's the vertical shift? 1. This is D, which is the midline. All right, who's got this one? This one's easy. The frequency is what? B over 2 pi. What's B? 3 over 2 pi. That's it. And the midline? Y equals -2. Yep. The vertical shift. Okay. You have some book work on that. On page 264, there's a couple frequency midline questions. Number 5 is also a question that's in the book, something like this. It says, in the same scale, the C above middle C has a frequency of 524 hertz. This is a frequency. Write an equation for a sine graph, sine function that can be used to model the initial behavior of the sound wave associated with this middle C if it has an amplitude of 0.1. So can anybody get me started on the equation? Y equals 0.1 sine something. Okay, we need a B here. The frequency is 524. That means the period is the reciprocal, which would be 1 over 524. How do you find B then? 2 pi over B equals the period. So cross multiply maybe? Think of it that way? I don't know. This is B equals, what do we got to do? Is it 1048 if I could write? Yes? If we 1048 pi, you can do a decimal, I don't care. Yeah, you can, it's a big number if you want to put it as a decimal. Make sure you wrote that one down because there's one just like it on the homework, okay? All right, I can do as many or, oh, we got one more section before I offer to do as many or as few. Help me write this equation for number 5. Y equals what? No. 2 is the amplitude.
2 sine 4.
This is the period. It's not the B value. B is equal to 2 pi divided by the period, or the period is equal to 2 pi divided by B. It doesn't matter. So B is 2 pi divided by 4, or pi over 2. Now, if you want to do factored form, all you have to do is x minus 1/2 for the phase shift. And the vertical shift is +4. Number 6 doesn't give us a period, so we are to assume the period is 2 pi, which makes b just what? 1. So anybody got number 6?
Pi equals 1.2 sine 3 pi plus 1.
That's it. More on writing equations next week. That is not on your homework until next week. Okay. I did number 7 yesterday. Did you need me to write the ordered pairs, or you're okay? This is just notes. Yes, you really did?
No.
Which ones do you... What do you want me to do, guys, for examples?
Oh, like for homework or not?
These are not oh, this is from the notes. Do you want me to do more examples off the notes, or do you have questions on the homework? Can I can do a couple examples here on the notes? What do you want me to do?
Homework.
You sure? Okay. I can come back and do some more graphing if you need me to. Go ahead. What do you have a question on?
I have a couple on 2, almost all of them.
Okay, worksheet 2B.
But number 5. Not number 5. No, I got number 5. 3. Yeah, 3.
Diameter of 220 feet makes a radius 110 feet. I'm sure you got that far.
Yes, I did. That's how
Okay.
far they got.
Angular velocity. If it takes 42 seconds to go around once, what's the angular velocity? What does the label on angular velocity have to be? It's got to be radians per time. Okay? What's 1 revolution? Rotates once. That's 2 pi, right? So what's the time it takes to rotate once? So there's an angular velocity. It says in radians per second, which we just did. You could reduce that. You could write it as pi over 21, or you could give me a decimal. I don't care. Nice job, Trey. And for B, to get to linear velocity, what do? You got to take that answer, which I just rewrote unreduced, sorry. And it wants it in, we got to multiply by the radius, which was 110 feet. So now we'll just have feet per second. Is that what they wanted? Oh, good. We didn't have to do any crazy converting. What else can I help with?
Number 6, please.
Okay, how many hours pass when the hour hand moves 77 pi radians? How long does it take the hour hand to go around? How many hours pass? Okay, once around is how many radians? Let's ask that question.
2 pi.
2 pi. So if we divide this by 2 pi, what do we get?
38.5.
Okay. How many hours is that? No, this is times around, but how many times did it go around? it goes around 1 revolution every 12 hours, right?
So that's 462 hours.
Okay. Is that right, Crystal? Crystal, is that what we had when we did this, check this earlier? 452 hours? 462? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wrote it down wrong. But, okay, I was just checking that we, yes. Yes.
I did it first.
You're right. That's how I did it on my work, I think. I was just talking it through this time and this made more sense. Sorry. If the clock's radius is 14 inches, what is the area? So that's area equals 1/2 r squared theta. You good from there?
Yeah.
Okay. 5 o'clock position, though, is 5 pi over 6's, right? So this right here is 5 pi over 6. And then you got to put in the 14 inches. So you can do that one. What is the angular speed of the hour hand? Okay. How fast is the hour hand going around, guys? Takes 12 hours to go around once. So yes, that's 2 pi radians in 12 hours. Or pi radians every what? 6 hours. You can give me a decimal, I don't care. What does the minute hand do, though? The minute hand goes around 1 revolution every what? 60 minutes, or 1, if you want to do it in you could do it in hours, you just say 1 hour, but this would be pi over 30, but then it would be radians per minute, or it's actually just 2 pi radians per hour. What else? Jacob, do you have bookwork questions? No? Trey? Which book page? Yeah, I don't like this question very much. I'm not sure why I assigned it. I must have been thinking we needed special right triangle practice, because that's really all it is. If this is the origin, here it says, and the radius is 40, so when Zoe starts her ride, she's at 40, 0. After she's gone 90 degrees, she's at 0, 40 up here. After she's gone 180 degrees, she's at negative 40, 0. Am I making sense so far? But it says 210 degrees. What's the reference angle for 210? 30 degrees. Okay. Where does 40 go on this triangle? That's not a good spot. I shouldn't have done what I just did. Because she's going around here. Okay. So she's actually 40 units out, right? Because the radius stays the same all the way around. Okay. So we need to find this x and this y. You could use some trig. I just used my special right triangles. The short leg is half the hypotenuse, so this is 20. Remember that? Anybody remember opposite of the 60 is the long leg, which is short leg times square root of 3. And what kind of signs do I need if I want an ordered pair for out here? Left and down. I think that's the answer in the back of the book. I'm not going to ask that question. I will say, guys, about this worksheet number 7, if you want to scrap the graph paper they give you and just do them freehand and then label your 5 ordered pairs, I'm fine with that, okay? I hate having to fit my graph onto these little graph papers, but I'll do it just for you, okay? Except this is gonna be so tiny, it's gonna give me a heart attack because the amplitude is only 1/2 and it's a vertical shift of down 1. So it starts here. What's the period, Sam? 2 pi. The b is 1. So the period is just 2 pi. By the way, I think it asked you to write the period and amplitude, but the vertical shift is down 1. I should have started by asking all those questions, but anyway, it's, that was bad. I don't know where that dot came from. I lied. Okay. So it starts at the maximum, which is 1/2 of a unit below, or 0, negative 1/2. And it's back there 2 pi later, so 2 pi, negative 1/2. The min is halfway in between there. What would that ordered pair be, guys? Pi, negative 1.5. I don't care how you write it. And then in between there at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2, it's crossing at negative 1. Is that good enough? I didn't write those other 2 ordered pairs, but are you good, Sam?
Yeah.
Someone else want me to do one off a worksheet? What's the amplitude? The period? It does. You just got to label some extra points. You're right. It is a cosine. Yep, so my dot's wrong already. It's a cosine, so its max should be at 1/2 here and here. Its min should be at negative 1/2 here. Okay. So what are the extra 2 little points you'd need in between there? If you take that period, remember I said take the period and divide it by 4?
0 1/2
Yes, pi over 8. So, yes, 1 pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, 3 pi over 8, 4 pi over 8. So I'm going to write them up here. You have 0, 1/2. It's from a program. Whoops, what's that pi over 4? It was down at negative 1/2. What's the next ordered pair? Anybody figure that out? We're counting by eighths. 0, 1/8, 2/8.
3/8.
4/8 or pi over 2. Yes. Did you take notes today? Here's how you do it. The frequency is the reciprocal of the period. So if you flip that frequency over, so 1 over 524 for that example, was the period, which is 2 pi over b, so then you got to find b and put it in the equation, okay? Guys, can I do 1 off 7b? Somebody want to pick one down at the bottom of 7b?
Let's do 17.
All right, number 17. What is the amplitude? What is the period? 2 pi divided by b, which is 3, so it's just 2 pi over 3. What is the vertical shift? Down 2, good job. And then the last one that's a little tricky is the phase shift, which is what? No. It's left because it's plus, but it's it's c over b, which is pi over 4 divided by b, which was 3. So that becomes pi over 4 times 1/3, which is pi over 12. So it's left pi over 12. Because it's not in factored form. Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Other questions? What does it mean when it has a negative out in front of the graph, or negative out front like this? If I had to graph this, which it doesn't ask me to do, it would be an upside down cosine, right? Okay. Nobody else has a question?